Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar organized by CORE. I would like to apologize for a slight change in the schedule from the original one which got communicated to you last week. The speaker was actually not available, so we thought, we'll shift another topic. And today's topic for this webinar is building cyber resilience using simulation. I'm going to be the facilitator today for this session. My name is Saurabh. Just to give a very quick background, I have been in the cybersecurity domain for last 16 years, and I have been leading cybersecurity initiatives for a lot of organizations across the globe, trying to devise cybersecurity strategies with a great focus on human capital. So I'm going to take you through how do you build a very strong cybersecurity resilience ecosystem in your respective organization using a very powerful tool called the simulation. Okay. Now let's look at why simulation is really so important. I'm sure all of you would have gone through several training programs in your organization and you would have learned a lot of knowledge about specific standards on information security, business continuity management, and risk management. The reason today we want to speak about simulation is because this is little more than what all of us have actually been doing in our previous training experiences. The simulation is a very powerful tool which not only gives you a knowledge element but also helps you how do you really implement that knowledge in a real-time scenario. How do you actually check all that knowledge which you have gathered in the last so many years by implementing it and doing some sort of attestation to the skills which you have already acquired. It's a way in which you actually get into an action-based learning where the outputs are very tangible and you are able to get through the results as you play around. So in this session, the idea is not to give you a lot of knowledge, but to basically involve you to showcase how simulations can really help to bring the organizations together, and at the same time, how can you collectively look at risk mitigation strategy irrespective of whichever function you represent, whether you are a top management, whether you are a compliance professional, whether you are a risk manager, how you could work together as a team and look at de-risking your cybersecurity risks. So let me come straight to what this cybersecurity simulation game is all about. So basically, we run this as a theme, and this theme focuses on a very specific business case. This business case is of a bank who does not have a very good reputation in the market, and they want to grow their business by getting more and more customers account in their bank. They want people should invest in their bank. At the same time, they want to ensure that all those people who have not done transaction with them, they want to get them on board. At the same time, they want to make sure that all the specific reputational related activities should be taken care of. In order to build confidence to the people that they are a good bank to do business with, I have basically organized a session with the museum in Tokyo, where they are going to showcase world's 3 most valuable objects. And those objects are the Star of Africa, which is a diamond, the Jewish Bride, which is a painting, and a Bugatti 59, which is an American car. Now, the idea is to get all these 3 valuable objectives so that people can actually understand that this bank really respects the value of that particular object and their money is going to be safe. So this is a very high level theme of the simulation game. I'm not going to go too much in detail. We will see as we progress. Now, at the same time, we have to understand, since this is a business case, the amount of time and the money which will be taken to put those objects into the Tokyo Museum, it is of essence, which means that any delay in the time, any extra money which is spent on the transportation damage the reputation of the bank as well as the museum. And at the same time, we all know that there are lot of cyber criminals who are working at the back end to hack and to steal those objects while they move from their respective origin to the Tokyo Museum. So that's a very broad theme for all of you today afternoon to understand how this simulation really works. Okay, let's look at the core objective of this simulation. The first objective is to create awareness on the importance of cyber security and cyber resilience. A lot of time, the top management has heard or they're aware that cyber security is important. We are now moving to an era where the digitalization is becoming more and more essential. But the simulation gives everybody an opportunity to actually participate in that workshop and understand that how it really impacts my business. Number two, you get a very nice view into what are the operational threats as you go along with this simulation. What kind of different risks they take place while you are transporting the objects, whether it is risk related to people, risk related to technology, risk related to the infrastructure, risk related to the suppliers. All those risks come into picture. And at the same time, you also realize what are the inherent weaknesses of the processes which this bank is running as a part of the operations. Number three, we look at who are the different players in this simulation. What are their roles? What is their job? What kind of responsibility do they carry in this entire simulation game? You also get various opportunities to apply the knowledge which you already have, whether it is from a risk management perspective or from a business continuity management perspective or from an information security perspective. And you also get areas where you can actually apply that knowledge and assess what is the current status of your cyber resilience in the organization as you keep moving. You also look at what are the possible outcomes of that strategy which you implemented, which means that this simulation workshop is not about just implementing something, but at the same time, you also come to know what are the consequences of choosing strategy A over strategy B, right? Last but not the least, the most important aspect is how do you develop a culture where you are able to benchmark how much attitude and behavior of individuals impact the success and failure of cybersecurity. It is not about the technology elements. It is not about the specific standards. It is about how does the human behavior and how does one response to a specific situation changes the overall cybersecurity posture in an organization. That is something which we will see. Okay, moving to what are the different roles which people play as a part of this simulation. If you can see on this slide, the leftmost top box is for Bank of Tokyo. Bank of Tokyo is usually played by somebody who is the sponsor of the cybersecurity or the risk management portfolio in the organization. This role typically gives out funding to risk managers, to BCM managers, to InfoSec managers to drive implementation in that specific area. If you look at London Museum, Amsterdam Museum, and Las Vegas, they are the respective business owners who carry that particular valuable object. So if I go back to my previous slide, we spoke about the Star of Africa, Jewish Bride, and Bugatti 59. These are the people who own those particular assets. So Las Vegas owns Bugatti, Amsterdam Museum holds the painting, and London Museum holds the African diamond. Transport manager's job is very obvious, to ship the objects from one place to another place. Tokyo Museum is the place where Bank of Tokyo is actually going to host this particular event. So if I go back to my previous slide, you would see that the Bank of Tokyo is sponsoring this event, but this whole exhibition is going to be happening in the Tokyo Museum. So that's one of the role in the game. Then if you go down in the slide, you would see three very essential critical roles. The first one is of a project manager. Like all of you are very well aware, project manager's role is to look at the time aspect, which means all the objects should be shipped on time from their origin to the respective destination. And at the same time, project manager has to keep a very tight control on the budgets, which means that whatever amount of money is being given by the sponsor, it should be utilized in a very appropriate manner in line with the project. Security officer's role is to manage the security interventions during this entire simulation. It's all about helping the project manager and the business teams to implement security controls, to help them by giving technical consulting, by giving them solutions which can assist them in moving the objects from point A to point B. And last but not the least role is the IT operations, which is responsible for taking care of all the IT related issues which would come as a part and parcel of this particular theme. It could be about laptops, it could be about user IDs, it could be about two-factor authentication, it could be about VPN. So a lot of technical things which we usually face on our day-to-day life. So if you look at this entire scenario, I don't think it is very different from your organization you come. More or less, the representation is same. If we ignore the industry type, here it is bank. Some of you would be from bank, some of you would be from oil and gas, some of you would be from manufacturing, retailing. But largely, this is how a very standard ecosystem looks like in an organization. So let's look at round one. In round one, you're supposed to create a cyber security policy, which means that you work as a team. So all these people, if you see in the previous slide, they all work as a team and they start documenting the 5 key aspects in the template. Now, conventionally, what it really happens is that while we are risk managers or security managers, we would typically fill in the entire document and give it to the top management for their approval. And most of the times, the top management is not having too much on reviewing the policy too much in detail and then approving it. But in this case, the idea is to put all the stakeholders in a room and let them work on creating a nice, crisp cybersecurity policy. So if you look at the template, it asks some very basic questions. What is it you must protect and why? What are the type of different assets you want to protect and what is your motivation to protect them? You could write it in a bullet form. The next one is how are you going to do this, which means what methodology is this particular team going to adopt to protect the assets? And what are the key processes, policies, or procedures which you are going to create in order to implement the desired changes? And the third point in this template is who are the key players, which means who are the people who are really important. At the same time, what is their responsibility when it comes to implementing a cybersecurity framework? So we all have read about a RACI matrix where we give an account responsibility, accountability, type of a matrix. So this is something which falls into picture. So when we start this simulation, everybody in the room has got a role card in front of him or her, and then they have got a brief description of who they are. So for example, if somebody is doing the Bank of Tokyo, he or she knows that what is my role and what are my responsibilities and what kind of authority and power I have in this particular game. So you all sit down together as a team and start developing the security policy. So as a facilitator, we give you 20 minutes to populate this full template, and it's a hard copy template. Once you have done this, we immediately move to the next exercise of doing a risk assessment. Now, all the participants would actually have a bunch of cards in front of them. But depending on what the risks are on your role card, you will pick up the material and you will see what kind of threats and vulnerabilities actually come across for each of those cases. And you start documenting it. So you will see small risk assessment cards on the picture right in front of you. It basically talks about that what are the risks, what are the vulnerabilities. So you keep documenting this. This is nothing but as simple to your risk register. All of us are used to preparing a risk register template in Excel sheet. So this is a similar activity, but instead of doing it on Excel sheet, we are doing it on the cards. And why we are doing on the cards? Because if for one specific risk, if there is a very specific advisory or a consulting required from the security team, you can actually go out and take an advice card. If you see, there is a bunch of advice cards next to the risk assessment cards. Like in our organizations, if we need any help, we hire a consulting firm, we take their expert services, and then we pay them. In the similar way, if you want to reduce your risk, you can go to the external world, which is the facilitator of this particular simulation game. You can pick up an advice card, you can pay the money, and you can turn the card around. You can look at the advice, and then accordingly you could implement it. This is something which is not compulsory, it is not mandatory, it is absolutely optional as per your choice, right? Okay, good. Now, after we have done this, so this entire exercise takes about 1 hour. So we do, information asset identification, then we do risk assessment, and then we look at what are the threats, vulnerabilities. So about 1 hour, we do a reflection of this round. And we do a reflection in a way, as I mentioned in the first slide. We try and probe a little bit more into detail to see how was the experience of the participants. So we look at what are the key aspects of the cybersecurity policy, which means the facilitator is going to pick up this particular template and read it out, that what is that the team has agreed to protect. Now this varies from team to team, it varies from individual to individual, but it's important that all these things are discussed in the reflection so that we know that is this something what we wanted to protect or we wanted to protect something else. What are the most important assets you have to protect? While you would have a very huge list of assets to be protected, but what are those which we really wanted to protect, which are important from a reputation perspective, from a brand perspective, from a finance perspective, from a security perspective? Moving on to the next one, what kind of threats did you discover? Now, when you are a part of the simulation, like a real world, it's almost impossible to document all the threats or all the risks, when you have a limited time. So we go through what are the threats which the team documented, and we go through each of them and see and try and challenge, was it really important? Did you miss out something? Or it could have been done in a different way. Then we look at, did the cybersecurity policy which you created help in setting the priorities? So while you created a cybersecurity policy in the template, were you really referring it to while you were doing the risk assessment and doing a prioritization of the threats which you identified? Do you understand what are the various differences between a threat vis-a-vis a risk versus a vulnerability, and what does it really mean? Because in few organizations, the clarity to the business is usually not there on how do I do a risk assessment. Okay, I'm ready to do a risk assessment, but I don't know from where to start. Okay, I've done a risk assessment, here is my result, what do I do next? So this also gives an opportunity to everybody to implement the knowledge which they have on conducting a risk assessment by using this material and the cards which are mentioned on your table. Then you also look at, are your operations vulnerable, which means that all the assets which you are trying to protect, all the processes which you have developed, are they still making your entire ecosystem look vulnerable, or are they safe? This is a question which is very, very subjective. It would depend on the specific simulation game which we are doing with a specific set of people. But this is usually, from my experience, very, very interesting. It changes from person to person. The opinion changes from team to team. But this is usually really interesting because there is no one answer, or I must say that there is no right or wrong answer. But you basically look at, are your operations safe, secure, are they going in the right direction or not? And the last activity which we plan to do in this simulation round one is to check with the participants what kind of improvements they have planned in order to make their operations more secure, moving to a more cyber resilience world. All right. Okay, let's look at what does round two brings for us. Round two is very, very interesting because now we come straight into action. Now we look at what kind of preparation is required in order to make the environment more secure. So we look at, depending on round one's performance, what are those configuration assets, what are those configuration items which we want to upgrade. So do we want to upgrade them or not? That is absolutely the choice of the participants. What do you want to really implement? So you want to have, a control, you want to have a preventive control, you want to have a detective control, you want to have a corrective control. So you would be given with a lot of choices. It depends on the entire simulation team participants to pick and choose what they want to do. The beauty about this whole simulation game is that there is no guiding standard which tells you to pick up this and drop something else. It is absolutely to the consensus of the participants on how do they want to play this simulation to make it more and more relevant for securing their assets. And then you start shipping the objects from the point of origin to the point of destination. So in round two, we pick up the respective locations. For example, for Bugatti, we go to US. For the painting, we go to Amsterdam. For the African jewel, we go to London. And then we have got 5 steps which you can see on the screen in front of you. So you have got A, B, C, D, and E. So every step there is an event. And when you turn the card upside down, you will see what is this event. If you have something on this particular event which you think that you need to take an action, you go ahead and take an action. If you already have deployed some control, you just move and go to the next particular step. So this is in a similar way. If the London Museum role is doing this, they get a charge for London. Similarly, you get a charge for Las Vegas, and similar way you get a charge for Amsterdam. And all these people, they keep getting support from the project manager from a time perspective. They get a detail from a time perspective, and they also get a detail from a cost perspective. And from a simulation perspective, they come to know that what all things are required in order to make it move securely, right? Now then, again, after about 1.5 hours in this particular round, because there are a lot of events. Now, since you all are security and risk professionals, this is typically about how do you mitigate the risk as you are processing your operations. So it's all about event management. It's all about responding to the events. It's about how much time you take to respond to an event. It's about what is your total time taken to respond versus how much time have you taken to recover from an incident. So sometimes what will happen that you would feel that I'm going in the right direction. We are going in a way where we feel it is the most secure way. But at times you will have to also get to a point where you will have to stop because of some security incident. This could happen, this could not happen. As I said, it's a simulation. It is nothing which is pre-planned. You all participate in this simulation as a real-time exercise. Depending on the choices which you make, you keep getting those incidents, right? Now let's look at what kind of reflection do we do at the end of round two. We look at, were we able to discover some more specific weaknesses in the system which were not very obvious in round one? Probably yes, probably no. Because when you are more into the details, you figure out okay, this is something which we didn't realize in round one, but looks like this particular asset should have been secured more, or we did not implement a good security here. We should have developed a specific risk procedure here. We did not prepare a risk procedure. All those things will start coming into play here. Uh, Second thing is that was the process followed? Now all of us know we are great in documenting policies and procedures, but how many how many times are we really able to implement, and if not implement, at least cross check with what we have written? In our day-to-day lives, when we have a security issue, we all sort of roll up our sleeves and we start working to fix that issue so that it does not repeat or it does not impact the business. At the same time, are we maintaining a nice event log? Do we have a historical chain of events so that tomorrow, if we have to do something called as a CAPA, corrective action and preventive action, are we able to do that or not? Were we able to deal with authorization, which means everybody does not has an access to everything in the organization? Were we making sure that only authorized people get an access to the information, or everybody was accessing everything, even through which they were not authorized? Were we taking all these signals seriously? So while it's a cybersecurity and risk management simulation, there was a lot of incorrect news also which was given to us. Were we taking it seriously? Yes or no? Do we still have our objects? Are we making efforts to ensure whether those objects which we are trying to protect, are they still with us or somebody has stolen them? We don't know. We'll have to see depending on our performance and the kind of controls which we've implemented. Did we organize an awareness campaign to see that everybody in the simulation is on the same page so that we all adhere to the same set of policies and procedures, right? Did we prioritize events and tasks, assets in order to look at what do we really want to protect first versus what do we want to protect later on? So all these things again play a very important and vital role while you are doing your reflection. So this is something which, you know, as a facilitator we would do while you are a part of that workshop. Moving to round three, again, so round three is again very similar to round two. The only change is that in round two, you were moving from your respective origin to the respective airport. And now in round three, you all have landed in the Tokyo airport. From Tokyo airport, now you will go to Tokyo Museum. So you have different events, you have got different vulnerabilities, you have got different set of risks, and then you have got different kinds of strategies to combat that risk. Again, you know, as a facilitator, we would do a reflection on how did you perform as a team and the improvements which you did in round two. Did they really work or not? Were they of any use or not? And most important question, as a sponsor, you will have to check within the team. Were you able to safely ship all the objects to the museum? And are they safe in the exhibition? Were they reached on time? Were you able to perform this activity within the budgets which were given to you? So all those questions will nicely combine and come to you as a part of the reflection session, right? Okay, and then at the end, we do a little closer to basically understand what kind of learnings you had about implementing cybersecurity in your respective organization, looking at all the learnings which you picked up during the entire simulation exercise. You would also be able to gauge what is your company's maturity while you are doing the simulation, because a lot of times all these things, they strike in our mind and we are able to correlate with our office work that, okay, I should have done this in my office job, or I could probably do this. So you have a basic sketch of your company's maturity level. You also get a lot of nice ideas on what should be your approach in implementing the cyber resilience policy in your own company. So you would be in a different phase of the implementation. Some companies would be very matured. Some companies would have just started the journey. Some companies would be somewhere in mid. So at least with this simulation, you get a lot of ideas, and those ideas are not theoretical. These ideas are very practical, which you can implement in your organization, irrespective of the sector you represent. The most important question, and I think this is one of my personal favorite questions, is which I mentioned during the start of this webinar, that what are those specific actionables which you are going to take back in the office, which means that the simulation is not about teaching you any specific area. The simulation is about reviving your previous experiences, your learnings which you have acquired in the risk management domain, and how will it really help you when you start working back into your organization. So in terms of who could participate in this, this is pretty much, I would say, open for people who represent the risk and compliance units in their organization, people who manage information security, business continuity management, governance, risk and compliance. Similarly, people who are responsible, who are business BU leaders, people who are data owners, project managers, pretty much who are a part of the classical enterprise, which all of us represent. So the good news is that we have got an upcoming simulation workshop as a part of our fifth annual summit, which is happening in Dubai on 20th and 21st. So on April 19th, we are doing this simulation workshop. So if any one of you who is interested, who believes that this is a very powerful session, will be more than happy to have you guys in the workshop. You could contact Neeraj. His name and email address is mentioned on the screen. Just for your information, we did this very successful workshop in last year's annual summit as well, and we got some very positive feedback. So I think Neeraj will be happy to share more details with whosoever is interested to participate in this workshop. So we're more than happy to have questions from the audience now. Any questions pertaining to the simulation, any question pertaining to what kind of cases do we run, we will be happy to address that. Okay, so I have a question here. What are the security threats in social networking? I think one of the biggest security threat in social networking is ransomware. I don't know how many of you would have encountered ransomware today. Is really on top of the chart. The biggest challenge today is because there is so much of social network in our life. We get up in the morning, we have got access to our Facebook accounts, our social networking accounts professionally. The issue is that we are more than visible on social network platforms. Our activities, our achievements, our places to visit, what kind of people are we hanging around with. I think more of that is now moving to social network. As a result of which, ransomware, in my view, should be ranked as #1 security threat. Why? Because if somebody is really doing a lot of posting on social networking, for example, if you guys buy a Ferrari and you put it on the social network website, somebody who is observing you in a very stealth mode, which is not very visible, will figure out this guy is rich. And if he is rich, how can I access his email account or any other data which is very sensitive to him and ask for a specific ransom? One has to be very careful of what you are trying to put. Putting too many information about your personal life would most probably lead to you becoming a victim of ransomware. Another threat in social networking, which I see very common, is that people start doing cyber stalking. Cyber stalking is people start following you. And I think that is something which is not very good because it is impacting our private life. It is hampering our privacy. This is something which should be avoided all the times, which means that you should not unnecessarily accept friend requests from anybody and everybody in the organization where you work, or anybody from this open network which you don't know, right? Okay, I'll pick up another question which I have. Uh, how many and what types of cyber incidents do we detect in a normal week? It really depends on what kind of you know business we are in. So, for example, if you are in a government business, you have got a specific portal where you get a lot of hits from your citizens, from your consumers. You would most probably have a lot of web-related cyber attacks. On the contrary, if you are an e-commerce company doing business through a mobile application, you would get into financial security incidents, which is about cloning of credit cards or doing information which is against the laws and the IT privacy laws for that particular country. Okay, now moving to the workshop again here, which I mentioned before I sum up my session. Now, this particular simulation workshop, the ideal batch size which we look is about 12 participants, because then it makes it a very powerful audience. You have got different roles to play. I can show you again for the sake of convenience. Uh, okay, so if you look at the specific activities here, right? Oops, I'm sorry. Yeah. So if you look at it, we've got a lot of different roles which people need to fill up as a part of playing this simulation. So somebody plays a role of a sponsor, somebody plays a role of business head, somebody plays a role of data owner, somebody plays a role of a logistic manager, then you have project manager, risk manager, IT operation manager. So there's a great amount of combination in order to make this a very successful and a very powerful cybersecurity simulations. We have done this simulation for almost more than 30 times in the last 2 years for various companies across the world. The feedback has been very, very positive. So I would strongly recommend to all of you, if you would take out time, attend this nice workshop and utilize your knowledge to see how well you can protect those three objects from Oceans 99. It was wonderful speaking to all of you. If you have any questions or any feedback, please get in touch with Neeraj. His email address is flashing on your screen now. It's neeraj.s@continuityandresilience.com. So thank you very much. I'll sign off now. I hope you had a good session, and I look forward to seeing you in Dubai next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.